The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of a mom and stepdad who were asleep in their home in a very quiet neighborhood when they were shot to death. Now police believe the murderer lived in the house. The teenage daughter. Here's the story. Sarah Grace Patrick, age 17, is charged with the February 20th, 2025 murders of her mother, Kristen Brock, and her stepfather, James Brock, in their Carroll County, Georgia home. Their bodies were discovered in bed by her younger sister. Shortly after, Sarah called 911. Investigators say they uncovered mountains of physical and digital evidence, leading them to arrest her as an adult. Sarah turned herself in July and has been held without bond. Supporters describe her as faithful, kind, and deeply distraught, demanding proof beyond just the online clues. As the case proceeds towards trial in early 2026, the community waits and wonders, is Sarah Grace a grieving daughter or something far darker? So these days, when you have a case involving someone, in this case a defendant who is 17 years old, one place that you look to try to understand what's going on in their life and who they are and what they're about is social media. And in this case, Sarah Grace Patrick, was active on social media. But it's really the tale of two different stories. I want to start by showing you some of the posts that she was doing before the murder of her mother and her stepfather. We begin on Instagram, and we take a look at this one with the caption, "Working on myself," the lips emoji. And this is one of those glamour shots, right? These are very, very common. Young men and young women posting them all the time. You get a lot of attention from it. You use some filters. You end up looking a little different, a little bit older than you actually are in this photo, if you've seen her in court. But that was one post. Here's the second post. Again, these are all before the murders. Mind over matter. Mind over matter. And again, somewhat glamorous, but here you have a little bit more of a casual type of pose inside a vehicle. Here's another one. Can't be bothered. And all of these, I mean, what we're hearing, like this stuff is extremely common. Extremely common. But this, again, another one of those glamour shots. You've got great lighting. Everything is framed properly. She's dressed up, again, appearing a little bit older than she does when she's inside of a courtroom. Now let's take a look at one more from the before batch that we have for you tonight. And this one says, just sit back and watch. Okay. Again, pretty standard stuff. Go online, you will see thousands and thousands and thousands of teenagers doing exactly what Sarah Patrick was doing before the murders. Now, afterwards, she's on TikTok. And things are a little different. A very vulnerable moment, right? The caption of this one, please send prayers for healing and for a break from everything. I'm so tired. I should probably delete later. This is a whole different version of Sarah Patrick that we're seeing. And her mother's dead. Her mother's shot in the house. She's in the house when it happens. The question is, did she or did she not do it? Stepfather also shot to death. Let's take a look at another one. This one, life's hard, but at least I have my mom. Now, we don't know the exact date of this one, but it could be before, but it's more likely afterwards. Life's hard, but at least I have my mom. Let's look at another one. It hasn't hit me yet that they're actually gone yet. It's public grieving, but again, you know, not every teenager has a situation like this, but again, go online, you will see teenagers do this, be very public with their emotions and what they're thinking. Let's take a look at the next one. This one. I know how it feels to have people saying the worst lies about you at your worst. And obviously this is after the murders, and there are rumblings, and there are, you know, rumors and people pointing fingers. And let's go to the last one from TikTok that we have. A caption on another TikTok. I'll never forget her last time speaking to me. She came in my room when I was in bed watching a show, and she told me good night in a deep voice, acting silly. I should have hugged her. So these are some of the after posts that Sarah Patrick put up there. Now, what else do we know about Sarah Patrick? Take a look at this, folks. This is from a motion filed by Sarah Grace Patrick's attorney. A motion in limine. Motion in limine is, we don't want this information in front of the jury. What do they not want in front of the jury? All comments relating to the defendant texting or having sex with other guys, or any reference to the defendant's alleged sexual behavior or promiscuity. All videos, posts, or pictures depicting or alluding to the sexual behavior of the defendant. All comments relating to the defendant's illicit drug use or hiding of drugs or drug paraphernalia. This is what the defense wants to keep out. So it seems that they are perhaps conceding that some of this evidence exists, right? You don't file a motion to preclude stuff if it doesn't exist. You usually don't. Brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight, an important one. Did social media play a role in what happened? I'm also interested, though, in this information from this motion to eliminate. Let's bring in our guests. Joining me, true crime podcaster from Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Tony Bruschi's with us. And Georgia criminal defense attorney John Luke Weaver. Great to have you both here. This first question I want to look at from a couple different angles, though, because there's the social media aspect of it, but there's also the defense wanting to limit any evidence of alleged sexual promiscuity and drugs. What role could sex or drugs have played in all of this? Tony Bruschi, I'll begin with you.
What role could it play? It could sway a jury one way or another with their assumptions about this person's behavior, with areas of this case that have absolutely nothing to do with the murders here. It's something where you don't necessarily, and this would be common in any case, you're not going to throw pieces of evidence into the jury's lap that are not relating to the crime itself. There already are so many questions here about her social media activity, or people's assumptions about her social media activity, what this means, what that means. It's another piece of information that is very, very objective, and if it doesn't tie to the actual crime, why do we actually need it admitted into the trial itself, unless there's a clear connection that we're unaware of yet?
Yeah, John Luke Weaver, if prosecutors wanted to put this in, I would be thinking maybe they're talking about, excuse me, some potential motive, some conflict in the house, that there was fighting going on between a teenager and her parents about sex and about drugs.
Absolutely, Vinny. I believe that there must be some evidence within the text messages between parents and her involving you cannot continue to have boys in the house, or you cannot continue to vape or do drugs, and that leads to the kind of controversy that potentially spilled over into murder.
Yeah, Tony, because we've all from the beginning with these allegations, why would she do this? All right, she's a teenager. Sometimes there's conflicts. Could the conflicts potentially be about sex and drugs, at least from the prosecution's perspective? The defense perspective is like, well, she didn't do it, so there is no motive to even talk about it.
Yeah. Well, what the problem is, we just don't know what the prosecution's case is on this. We have a mountain of evidence, but we're not going to tell you what any of that is. We're just going to be kind of skirting around here and maybe this, maybe that, but we're not going to say anything. And we'll find out. I'm guessing they have a case. I would hope they have a case. We've seen otherwise, though, in other trials. But that's the thing. We just don't know right now what exactly they have in their cards. And to be honest, these sort of issues, there are issues in most homes throughout America with teenagers in them at one point or another. And most of the time, it doesn't lead to murder. These aren't really serious, oh my goodness, the next step is they're going to be offing their family issues.
Yeah. John, you know these jurors down in Georgia, right? Will they want to hear a story about why she did it, even though, as we all know, we say it all the time on Court TV, motive, not an element of the crime. Prosecutors don't have to prove it. But in a case where you are alleging that a teenager blows away with a gun her mother, her own mother, in her own house, along with her stepfather, is the jury going to want to hear a story about why she may have done this?
I think they are, Vinny. If I had to flip to the other side and prosecute this case, I would try to bring in every bit of evidence that I could, maybe file 404B motions to bring in all of these issues that was potentially going on in this family. Again, we don't know because this mountain of evidence so-called out there has not been revealed. But every bit that I could, issues of her being on drugs, I understand that maybe even the parents were on drugs at one point, and this tumultuous nature that somehow led to Sarah Grace snapping.
Tony, let's get back to the social media and these images. Do they tell any story to you about this young woman?
They don't really tell me a story about a crime. It certainly is becoming something we're talking about. Like we've been saying, the state hasn't really given us a whole lot of information. I think there's a generational gap in how people are interpreting her behavior on social media, and it's massive. This is a 17-year-old girl. She grew up on TikTok. That platform is her news. It's her community. It's where she sees crimes get solved. So her mother gets murdered. The case isn't moving. There's no arrest. There's no answers. What does she do? She goes where the audience is. She reaches out to true crime creators to try and get some coverage. And somehow that's suspicious because she believes it will get views. I'm just not following that line of thinking. 20 years ago, if a family felt like their case wasn't getting attention, they'd call a local TV station. They'd go to the radio station. They might fax you, Vinny. This is just their mode of communication today.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I agree with you. The only caveat is one of those podcasters said the story that she was told didn't make sense, but we'll see if that rears its head in the trial. Great news. Tony and John are going to stick around this hour. Coming up next, what type of evidence do prosecutors have in this case?
Mountains of evidence has gotten us through here today. Lots of processing, lots of working with our law enforcement partners.
The Court TV Podcast will return.
People are assuming her guilt, and she's innocent until proven guilty. And there are people that are assuming that she's guilty and making comments online that are totally uncalled for.
That's Sarah Grace Patrick's grandfather, who is the father of one of the victims in the case, Sarah's mom. That's Sarah's mom's dad, Sarah's grandpa. I want you to take a listen to Ashley Hulsey from the Carroll County Sheriff's Office talk about the evidence in this case. And Tony Bruschi was talking about, like, what do we know? What do we know? Here's what they have told the public about the evidence in the case against Sarah Patrick.
So I believe in the beginning of any case, everyone's a suspect. I think I told many of you that when we were on scene that day. However, as an investigation continues and everything ebbs and flows, like I said in my press release, mountains of evidence has gotten us through here today. Lots of processing, lots of working with our law enforcement partners to get us to where we are today that honed in on her as a suspect.
Do you believe that she tried to cover this up in any way over the course of these months? You know, we've even seen videos on social media of somebody saying, you know, I'm making this message on behalf of the daughter. Do you believe she tried to get people to cover up that?
Considering that she didn't just immediately tell us what happened, yes. But who knows what's going on in a young person's mind like that. But she has been arrested and charged now, and we feel confident that she is responsible for their murders. But like I said, it is an open, ongoing investigation. It's very possible others are involved as well.
What was the key break in the case?
Just evidence, being able to go through evidence, being able to use private laboratories, being able to use GBI Crime Lab. You know, when you're processing stuff, like I said, it doesn't come back in an hour. So we've been filtering through, and there's still evidence left to process.
You noted the digital evidence. I assume that's text messages, emails. Was there some type of a trail that led you that way?
There's always a lot of evidence. I won't go into exactly what it is because it is an open, ongoing investigation, but we have mountains of evidence. We don't know what goes through the mind of a child who wants to harm their parents. It is a very horrific and sad case.
Okay. I sense confidence, absolute confidence from investigators here, but obviously there was no hearing, there were no motions filed that gave us an indication as to some of the specifics. And a lot of times we do have that information. We also know where this all took place. Let's take a look at the home. It's in Carroll County, Georgia, very rural, suburban kind of location. People have property. The house is not huge. It is not sprawling, but it's a nice house. It's got, I believe, 3, maybe 4 bedrooms, all on one side of the house, on that right side of the house. If you take a look at it, we also have an image from up in the sky from the drone. And when you take a look at the drone footage, you can see, as you can see from those pictures, yeah, there's trees. There's no neighbor right next door to you. So gunshots in the middle of the night, I don't think are going to wake people up in that neighborhood. So let's kind of review here about what we do know about this case and what's been made public in terms of evidence or potential evidence. Sarah Patrick's mother, stepfather, found shot to death in their bed. That's Kristen and James Brock. February 2025 at their home in Carrollton, Georgia, Carroll County. Sarah Patrick's 6-year-old sister is the one who discovered the bodies. Sarah called 911 herself, but she was not arrested until July, 5 months later. 5 months it takes to build the case. Investigators say her digital footprint is of interest. The sheriff's office spokesperson didn't rule out more arrests when asked about whether anyone else could be responsible. Now, Dennis Nolan is Sarah's grandfather, and as I mentioned, the father of Sarah's mom, so one of the victims in the case. Here's what he said about the evidence in the case.
For them to charge Sarah without, you know, and I'll say this, the investigator told me the day they issued the warrant, when I asked him, I said, well, what proof did, you know, why did you pick on Sarah? He said, well, she's the only one who could have done it. And that's a quote. But and that's, you know, to me, that's not enough proof to throw a 17-year-old girl in jail.
All right, that brings us to the next question in our investigation. All about the evidence. What type of evidence do prosecutors have in this case? Is it just, it couldn't be her 6-year-old sister, so it's her? She's the only one who could have done it? Do they have the forensics? Is this a DNA case? I don't even think they have a murder weapon. Let's bring in our guest. Joining me, retired police commander, author, and host of the podcast Profiling Evil, Mike King is with us, and still with us, Georgia criminal defense attorney John Luke Weaver. All right, Mike, a lot of confidence I sense. Do you think they have the evidence to back this up? And it's a different kind of case, right? Because it's not a stranger, so if her DNA is in the home, her DNA is in the home.
Yeah, Vinny, I think that's going to be a challenge. But if law enforcement was able to collect evidence on site that would link Sarah to the crimes, that's going to be incredibly valuable. And to go forward and say we're going to do we're going to charge this girl as an adult, and to say we have mountains of evidence makes me think that they may have things. I mean, I don't know for sure what type of weapon was used in this homicide or these homicides, whether it was a semi-automatic weapon that possibly could have discharged casings that were laying on the ground that might have a fingerprint on them or DNA from the person who loaded that weapon and fired it, or if it was a revolver and those were retained in the weapon and disappeared. We don't know if the weapon belonged to the father or the home or it originated somewhere else, but there undoubtedly are digital trails of a lot of things that we're not aware of. And there's also forensic evidence that we're not aware of. We don't know if there were tests like gunshot residue on Sarah's hands, or if there was any kind of blowback debris from the wounds that these two people suffered, and did that end up in clothing that was later collected that would tie her back to the actual scene versus what she was wearing when law enforcement arrived. Those kinds of things are the pieces of evidence, physical evidence, forensic evidence, that I think are going to really play out on this, not to mention the incredible boatload of digital evidence that must be available. We don't know if there were things that were on her mobile devices that were later deleted, but they were able to recover that during searches. So many things that were just kind of left in the unknown with. But when you see the defense responding quickly with something like a mental health evaluation, which hopefully is for the good of this young girl, or they're doing it because they know that there's more coming down the pike and they need to start getting some other things into play, or if it's just the confidence of a public affairs officer who says, we have mountains of evidence, all of that tells me that they've got a few cards in their deck that we're not seeing yet that are probably going to play really strong in this hand.
John, it took 5 months for the arrest. Does that tell you anything?
I think she said it. When you're dealing with the GBI and these very detailed, the forensic analysis that's going to come out of so many of these types of investigations, I would imagine that they've probably searched very thoroughly her bedroom, because if you then would expect, where would she go? If she did this, where would she go? She would go back to her bedroom, and a 17-year-old is not going to have a clue how to cover up evidence. So it is very likely that there's probably blood evidence or DNA evidence that was taken from her room. I am shocked from what I'm hearing so far. We've really not argued a lot of motions in this case, or any outside of the motion for bond. I'm shocked that motions to suppress search warrants haven't been filed by the defense, because I imagine if there are mountains of evidence, we're dealing with cell phone searches and searches of her personal property that should have at least been, some motion should have been filed.
Yeah, that's been the part, right? That usually happens, and we usually get little pieces and get an understanding of some of the strongest evidence in the case from those motions, but hasn't happened here. John Luke Weaver, Mike King, great to see you both. Appreciate it. Have a great holiday season. Still to come. Is Sarah Patrick capable of double murder?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the tragic, brutal murder of a couple in Georgia who were asleep in bed. The case went unsolved until the shocking moment police arrested the teenaged daughter, whose freckle-faced mugshot went viral. Here's the story. In Carroll County, Georgia, a quiet rural home became a crime scene that stunned even seasoned investigators. Sarah Grace Patrick, just 17 years old, stands accused of killing her mother, Kristen Brock, and stepfather, James Brock. Their bodies found shot to death in bed by her 6-year-old sister. Moments later, Sarah Grace called 911. Detectives say her story didn't add up. Digital trail, social media posts, and private messages allegedly pointed back to her. After months of investigation, she surrendered to police and now faces murder charges as an adult. Prosecutors call her manipulative and dangerous, while supporters describe a faithful, broken teenager incapable of such violence. With no bond and a trial looming, the mystery deepens. What drove a beloved church-going girl to be at the center of an unthinkable crime? Was it premeditation or an alleged moment of chaos that destroyed a family and left a community grasping for answers? So when we talk about family in this case, it's another situation where we're talking about a blended family, right? Because Sarah's mom and dad no longer together. Mom gets remarried, and that's one of the victims in the case is the stepfather and her mother living in that house. Now, the way things are sort of breaking down, when you hear from people from the stepfather's side of the family, they believe that Sarah Grace is responsible for this. And then you go on the other side of the family, it's not as clear, and a lot of people are questioning whether or not she did this. And so she has supporters. So let's hear some of the various people who are supporting her, family and family friends, starting with her father, Daniel Patrick, who spoke with Newsweek.
I know 100% in my heart that Sarah's innocent. She's a typical 17-year-old that, lived like a teenager, and she would never do this. As a father, this has been one of the most hurtful things in my life. I'm sorry, but it's just hard,
There was nothing, DJ, her father, he's a good person, and he and Kristen got along very well. They had their disagreements, but they had been divorced for so long that they got along quite well, and they were cooperative, and Sarah would go visit him at times. They had their disagreements, just like any teenage daughter would have with a mother. But Sarah was a good kid. I mean, she really was. I'm just in total shock. Because she, first of all, the length of time that's passed and the fact that they arrested her without any evidence that I know of. Everything seems circumstantial, and I think they were just desperate to arrest someone and to try and, because the case was open for months. A lot of investigation. I know they tried hard to find the murder weapon. They tried hard to find who was involved. They investigated a lot of people. You take a 100-pound girl and you hand her a 9mm pistol and you ask her to fire it, who doesn't have a lot of, I don't know if Sarah had ever shot a gun before. She was here, and whenever we shot guns, they were rifles. I never saw her shoot a pistol. But I just can't imagine, the accuracy that gun had in her hands. I don't think it could happen.
As our relationship grew, she began to open up to me about her past and experiences with Kristen and James. One thing she said that has always stayed with me was, no matter what they've done, I will always forgive them and love them, because deep down, I know that's not who they truly are. The statement showed the depth of Sarah's heart.
My name is Ben Bonner, and I serve as lead pastor at Catalyst Church in Carrollton, Georgia. She has continued to attend services regularly. She and her family often travel over an hour just to be with us.
This brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is Sarah Patrick capable of double murder? And you can add the words cold-blooded there, right? Someone's sleeping. That's cold-blooded double murder. Still with me, true crime podcaster from Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. It's Tony Bruschi. And joining me, Georgia criminal defense attorney Ryan Brown. All right, Tony, what are your thoughts? I mean, you cover so many of these stories and these cases, and now we're getting a little bit of a profile of Sarah Grace Patrick. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, is anyone capable of pulling a trigger, even a smaller female? Of course they are. The real question is it likely? Is it probable? Is there a track record here? And from what we publicly know right now, because I'm still waiting on the mountains of evidence, I believe there might be something in there that they keep talking about, but won't actually show us as of right now. Has there been a single thing that makes this probable based on facts and not feelings? In my estimation, the answer is no. What we have here is a 17-year-old girl being indicted in the court of public opinion based on her social media posts that seem attention-seeking. And I have to ask, I mean, people, have you seen a 17-year-old girl? Attention-seeking behavior on social media is kind of a Tuesday for them. That's not, it's what they do. And if you take that baseline and add her mother was just murdered. She's lived through years of custody battles where she's begged the court to let her live with her father, and they ignored it. She told police at 11 years old she felt unsafe in the home. She watched her mother allegedly try to run over her stepfather with a car and then watch them get married anyway. You're not going to get a girl acting normal after that. But here's my question. What is normal? How is she supposed to act after all of this? What's the right amount of crying, the right amount of TikToks, the right length of eulogy? Because apparently she got it wrong, and now that's evidence.
Ryan, what are your thoughts here? Because, you know, you look at the mugshot, you look at her appearance inside the courtroom. She looks younger than she actually is. And I think that's a question the jury may have, you know. Is she really capable of double murder? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, you know, as the question's framed, is she capable of double murder? I frankly think that's going to be a stretch for the prosecutors. Now, that doesn't mean that she didn't pull the trigger, right? We don't know if she did or not, but we do have information that leads to the fact that maybe she did feel unsafe in this home. Maybe there was something going on in the home. Maybe there was something where the defense is going to be looking at this as hey, she did pull the trigger, but this was some sort of justification, whether she was protecting herself or her little sister or whatever it may be. Maybe she did pull the trigger, but maybe it wasn't murder.
Yeah. Tony, what were your thoughts when you saw the mugshot, when you initially saw the mugshot?
I was curious because she looks nothing like the TikTok photos. Like, is this the same person? Obviously it is. But I mean, that just shows, you know, just how different realities can be in lives of teens. They're trying to project themselves one way online to their followers, to their friends, and then in real life, she's a young girl with her whole life ahead of her. And I mean, if you were just to look at her and go, did you commit double homicide? I don't think many people would be checking the yes box on that, but images can be deceiving.
Ryan, one of the things that the defense wants to keep out, and we've been talking about this tonight, are allegations of illicit drug use, many sexual partners, promiscuity on the part of this defendant, this 17-year-old. What are your thoughts about that type of information? If, in fact, it gets in front of the jury, does that change their perception of this freckle-faced accused double killer?
Yeah, I think that, you know, any attempt by the state to use evidence like that really reflects on probably weaknesses in their case, right? When we see prosecutors try to turn it into a character battle where they just want to smear this person and make the jury not like them, that's really a risky strategy for the state, because if you look towards appeal or something like that, the courts, the appellate courts can look harshly on the state for trying to introduce that type of character evidence. So a lot of times, if the state has a very strong case, as they claim to have in the press. At least we haven't really seen it yet, as far as I've seen. That is telling to me as far as maybe the strength of their case. So, hey, they're taking this position where, well, we're just going to try to make the jury just not like her and make her look like some sort of bad person because she's a teenager who's done, smoked some pot and has done whatever else that, frankly, is not relevant whatsoever to whether she committed murder or not. Now, if they've got some smoking gun that ties the drug use or something into a motive, then I see that coming in. I see it being appropriate. But unless they have that, unless they can link that back up, I don't see a way where that is, what we would call probative, right? That it makes something that matters more likely to be true or not in the trial.
All right. Ryan's going to stick around. Tony Bruschi, great job tonight, as always. Thank you so much. Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Check it out, folks. Coming up next, why is the defense using a neuropsychologist in this case?
This is the Court TV Podcast.
I'm sort of on a campaign on Sarah's case. I think she's innocent until she's proven guilty. I think that I need to tell people what kind of person she really was. I mean, I'm her grandfather. She and I were very close. And she was a wonderful little girl.
Sarah Patrick, her grandfather, is convinced. And his daughter is the victim in all of this, one of the two victims. So his opinion does have some meaning here. Take a look. In a recent hearing, Sarah Patrick in court, the defense said that they are waiting on a report from a neuropsychologist that they hired. A neuropsychologist. That person did a mental evaluation of Sarah over multiple visits. Prosecutors said the results could lead them to get their own evaluation. And this is the one thing that could delay the trial from beginning right at the start of the new year. Take a listen to the judge and the attorneys talking about it.
On August 19th, our office retained the services of Dr. Robert Schaefer, who is a forensic neurologist, neuropsychologist, to evaluate Ms. Patrick. All in all, he's completed the evaluation, but he has not given me a formal written report.
Then we'll set it down for the case is set for January 5th. We will proceed on schedule.
This is interesting. In a lot of the cases that we cover, when a psych comes in, I hear forensic psychiatrist coming in. But here, it's a different type of expert, I think. And that brings us to the final question this hour. Why is the defense using a neuropsychologist in this case? Neuropsychologist. Joining me, psychotherapist and founder of the Renew Center of Florida and Renew Me, Dr. Lisa Palmer is with us, and still with us, Georgia criminal defense attorney Ryan Brown. Great to have you both with us right now. All right, Dr. Palmer, let me ask you first, neuropsychologist, what does that mean? Is that a different type of expertise here?
Well, in the context of a legal case, it'd be very similar to a biopsychosocial, but when they're evaluating the defendant, they're going to be looking at, all aspects and how it relates specifically legally. And a lot of times when they're doing these kind of evaluations, it's a bit more scientific. And so based on that, they're going to be seeing, what was the intent of the defendant, what it was the, cognitive abilities of the defendant, and how did it affect insight and judgment. And that is going to ultimately affect the turnout of the case. So it is really, really important in this case.
All right, Ryan Brown, what are your thoughts here about the defense getting this neuropsychologist as an expert? What does it tell you? Why are they doing this?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, this court, and I practice in this court all the time. This is in my backyard. This judge particularly is going to keep a tight schedule. So the defense definitely had to get ahead of things. And, this is honestly on the quicker end of how quickly you would have an expert in a case probably being able to evaluate someone. But when we're dealing with someone at this age, and where there is at least some hints that there may be evidence of some sort of traumatic or at least a couple, if not more, traumatic events in the past, whether it be witnessing any domestic issues or things that she's been through. We're looking at someone whose age, the brain is not completely developed. We may be trying to evaluate from the defense standpoint how someone of her age would react to certain scenarios, how a 17-year-old's brain may process and react differently to someone who's 37 or 47 or even 27, right? Especially when we start talking about the social media stuff. That's been something that both the law enforcement and the court of public opinion has been really focused on is, hey, this is why is she acting this way? Why does she behave this way, right? That is something that an expert can come talk about, right? Is, hey, this is the brain of a 17-year-old. Are they responding how they should respond? Who gets to decide whether someone's TikTok or Instagram is an appropriate response, right? So there's kind of two ways the defense could be going. Is it, hey, we need to focus on the things that were happening online immediately afterwards and whether they were appropriate or not? Do they tend to make it more true that maybe she did this? Or is it, hey, how she responded to things that have happened in the past to her, and could it have made it more or less likely this case that she did this?
Dr. Palmer, how does this evaluation go? How do you get the information?
Right. So one of the things is scanning documents and looking at documents that are out there. So they're going to be talking to different officials. They're going to be looking at her history, everything from, her medical and health history to what's happened in school to interviews with family members and friends and people who may have known her to see if she's had some kind of a history, if there's a, documentation of previous records of incidences. They're going to be looking at all of that, and they're going to be doing neurological testing as well, and also seeing if she has a previous, mental health history. So if she had ever been to counseling or had ever had issues regarding, mood instability or substance abuse or, a variety of factors like trauma and how trauma can affect somebody, and if there's any dissociation there, if she's had any instances of that, what her emotional regulation is, what's her memory, and how all of these factors will play a part in sort of the design of this person mentally. And then that's going to help to paint a picture as you're gathering the evidence of what she said or did do or didn't do in the eulogy and online and whatnot. It will paint a better picture of what's going on.
More of an explanation. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not necessarily going to be an admission that she did it. It can be explaining some of the surrounding behavior. Great job tonight, Dr. Lisa Palmer. Great to have you here. Ryan Brown, thank you so much. This trial is set to go in the beginning of the year unless this new wrinkle that we're talking about right here involving this neuropsychologist completely changes the case. Will it go from someone else did it to some mitigating factor that attempts to explain some of this behavior? If so, that may be a completely different trial. Of course, we'll cover it. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.